Welcome, we're your hosts Alicia
and Whitney
on Coming Up Higher, where we're creating space through conversations, special guests, and inspiration
for you to come up higher in the things of Christ in everyday life. Hey, Come Up crew, welcome back to another week of Coming Up Higher. Today we get to introduce you to our friend Andrea, and she is just such an amazing person, beautiful soul. She is a worship leader, and she just has such a revelation of what purity in worship looks like and how to just connect with heaven. Like as here on earth, we have the opportunity to go about our day and literally connect with heaven. So you're not going to want to miss today's episode, but she's Andrea Okwu, and she's been a worship artist, songwriter, worship leader for most of her life. And at an early age, she knew that leading people in worship was her calling. She's been a worship leader at the Rock Family Worship Center for over 16 years. She and her producer husband, Johnny, love working together and creating music for others to worship Jesus. So you'll want to check out her music. You'll want to check out this episode. So let's go ahead and listen to the conversation we had. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Coming Up Higher. We are Alicia and Whitney, and we are super excited for this episode because we get to have a fellow worshiper here on with us.
We love the worship podcast.
Yeah. And rumor has it, she actually grew up singing with her sisters. So we have that connection too. Lots of connections here, but she is a good friend of our friend we've had on here, Ron Rawls. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to his podcast, then you know he's probably got good friends because he's a really good person.
Yes.
So we just want to go ahead and welcome Andrea to the show. Andrea Okwu. Did I say that right?
Yes, exactly. You got it right.
Awesome. She's coming to us from Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah,
I am.
So thankful for technology.
Yes, it's so great that we get to chat through this.
Yeah, so we want to get to know you more as our listeners get to know you more. Tell us about what drew you into worship. What awakened that passion within you?
Okay. Well, it kind of goes back to just my childhood. I grew up in a very, very small town called Pisgah, Alabama, teeny tiny town. And I grew up going to a Baptist church, which I love that I started church there. I had a really great foundation as far as just learning about the Bible, learning about Jesus. And I feel like it really did establish just, I guess, the overall atmosphere of where I felt like I wanted to take my life. I feel like my sisters and I, we talked about, you mentioned my sisters, we grew up and we were the Wheeler Girls. That was my maiden name, the Wheeler Girls. And so we were growing up singing all the time at different things in the community and church. And so in amongst all of that, I feel like that's sort of what birthed my love for worship. It wasn't just necessarily just because I like to sing. I think it was just, obviously it took me deeper in my relationship with Christ. And so when I went to church there for years, and it was a wonderful foundation, but I will say that I think sometimes I knew I was singing about Jesus. I knew that it was a good thing, and I loved singing about him, but I think in my heart, I knew there was something deeper. So as I got older and I moved out of my hometown and started attending a different church. It was a non-denominational church, and it was just different. It was just, I started just kind of feeling something different. And I was probably 18 years old at this point, and so I knew the Bible, and I knew the foundation of who God was and who Jesus was to me and what he had done in my life. But I don't know that I had really truly experienced like true freedom in worship until then. And it was crazy because I went to a conference, and it was one of those big conferences, where you have different worship leaders and different bands come through. And I kept looking around and seeing all of these people in the room. And I was like, gosh, I know all these people love Jesus. and they're raising their hands and they're, just closing their eyes and just really in it. And I know that sounds weird, but I never really experienced that kind of atmosphere before. But I knew in that moment, I want that. Like, I want that. That's what I want to go deeper in. And so I just remember that was a turning point for me in my life, just wanting to go deeper with him. And so it's funny because I was singing and leading worship at my church, but it was different. Just like it switched. It was like I couldn't, just stand there and sing a lot of times before that. But then I couldn't. After that, I'd had that revelation. It was like I couldn't stand still. I couldn't still. I just wanted to move, and lift my hands. And it was just a moment, just incredible, that I could just feel his holiness just coming in and taking over, and being able just to worship him at a deeper level. So I feel like it started when I was younger, but I also feel like I'm still growing in that. I'm still growing just to fall even more in love with Jesus every time I step into worship. And I tell my team at church a lot of times, I'm like, I don't ever want to step on this stage or step in this sanctuary or wherever we are and take it for granted, because I feel like, especially after this past year, even I think that's probably been more of a revelation for some people, but I've always said that, like, I don't want to take this moment for granted, because it's just another moment that you can go deeper and you can get closer with him and experience him in a different way, in a fresh way. So that's sort of, I guess, in a way sums up how, I guess, what it means to me and where it came from. Yeah, because honestly, I don't know that I had ever really seen that anywhere. And it was like, the moment I saw it, I was like, that makes total sense. Why have I not been doing this? Because I love the Lord this much. I want to be free in worship. And so I just think it's just the coolest thing to even see that in other people now that I'm older, and I've experienced that with, like, just like you said, in different services, seeing that eye-opening experience for people, or it hits them. Oh, I can actually worship that way. I can worship with freedom. And it doesn't mean that you have to be that way. It doesn't mean that you have to be eccentric in your worship, because the Lord loves both. He loves all of it, anything. And but I just think that for me, I was so I don't know, maybe just sheltered. I don't mean that in a terrible way, but I felt like I was sheltered from it for a while, until finally I think the Lord just opened my eyes to it. And I was, still going to that Baptist church, but it did change things for me, just because I just wanted to go deeper with him. And so I love seeing that open up within, whether, whatever service you're in, that you can go deeper and worship with him. However it looks, you can do that.
Yeah, I like that. However it looks, that's good. And one of the things about worship that we love so much is how it is such a connection point with the Father, but especially during difficult times. We felt like we went to a different level in worship and communing with the Father when we lost our earthly father to cancer. And it just was like such a intimate place, in the secret place, to encounter God. Is there a time in your life, a difficult time in your life, where worship was awakened in a different way because you were walking through that difficulty?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably two separate moments in my life. I grew up, like I said, in church, but my parents divorced when I was 8 years old. So it was a really weird time for me. I mean, you're an 8-year-old, and it's enough to where you've really experienced enough to understand kind of what's going on. But I remember I shut down. I just shut down as just a kid. I wouldn't talk about anything. But I just remember, even as an 8-year-old, y'all, I mean, that's just what's crazy to me, is that even as an 8-year-old, there were moments where I would just sit in my room and I would just talk to the Lord. I would just pray. And it was, I can remember, like, thinking at the time, like, I'm a kid, I don't know how to deal with, I didn't know how to deal with all those emotions. And I really feel like the Lord walked me through that, even though I didn't talk a lot about it. I felt like there was just something like he was just always helping me, guiding me through that, because it was a really hard, that was a really hard moment for my family, you know. The other time is actually not too long ago. So I have a little 4-year-old boy, and he's amazing. I see Jesus in him a lot. It's just amazing to see him, and gosh, it's just amazing what opens your eyes there. But after I had him, I went through a time where I was, it was like anxiety just seeped in. And I'd never been that kind of person before. I'd never dealt with anxiety. I never even really, I mean, I struggled, you know, just your normal, if you're anxious about a test, or if you're anxious about, you know, going somewhere or whatever. But this was like a true, like, stronghold, like something came over me. And I know it was just the enemy trying to break me down, but it was really a moment where I felt like I had no control over myself anymore. And I was so anxious 24/7. And it wasn't necessarily that it was one thing or the other. You know, there are a lot of different things: managing home life, managing, you know, a career, being a mom, a new mom. It was a lot of different things that kind of added up, that just finally I looked at my husband one day and I just said, I don't know how to deal with this. I can't comprehend how to handle this. And side note, I'm a real prepared person, y'all. I like to plan. I like to make sure everything's in line. You know, I'm just on top. I feel like I'm on top of things. So try to be, at least. I'm sure I failed many, many times, but this was a weird time for me. It really was just like a low point in my life. And I know that, you know, it doesn't sound necessarily, oh yeah, people deal with anxiety, but people deal with deep anxiety. And this was that for me. And so I remember one night just sitting at home, and I think everybody was in the bed because I was by myself. It was an odd moment that I was by myself, but I remember just literally sitting down and just sitting and listening to worship. I had it playing in my house, and I always have it playing in my house, but like at this moment, it was like I heard it at an elevated level. And it was like the Lord was just speaking to me. You got to be still. I mean, in general, you've got to be still and know that I am God. You've got to understand this.
Yeah.
I know you have it in your heart, but it was like he was literally saying, you got to sit here and just feel the peace that I have, that I bring, that's been surrounding you. It's been all around you. It's just, you have been so wrapped up in just the anxiety, that stronghold, that you couldn't see it. It was like a veil was over my face, and I just couldn't see that the whole time. He's just right there around me. And I think worship, even during that time, I mean, y'all, I was still leading worship at church and still, you know, walking it out. But one thing I do, like, I think back on it and I'm like, I know that, you know, sometimes you have to be careful what you take on stage. You have to be careful what you are doing when you're leading people into worship. You don't want to take those things that you're dealing with and transfer it onto someone else, you know, in worship. And I do remember being just honest with myself in that I was truly worshiping. And when I told my husband about it, I like literally just one day just said, I've just got to tell you all about this. I think it was like a weight lifted off of me. And the Lord also was just saying, you cannot do this alone. With me, and you got to have other people supporting you. And so in that moment, I remember thinking, you know, I've got a team of people who I work with in worship, who I'm with every single week, leading people. I've got a congregation that we're a team. And we, you know, it was just like, almost like I thought of that as my team building me, lifting me up from that deep, dark place. And in the moments of worship, it's funny because I didn't even think about, it didn't even cross my mind. It was like when the service started or when I was in a song, it was like everything just drifted away. And the human side of me didn't realize that the whole time the remedy for the anxiety was to worship
Yeah.
the whole
That's
time.
good.
Yeah.
Being someone who was like enthralled with worship, all the time in my life, it still didn't hit me, because I think also that the enemy, he's going to try to attack you in the one place where you think he won't attack you.
So
And
true.
so there's the two, I feel like, big moments of my life that worship came in.
Yeah. And I so appreciate your vulnerability, because a lot of times leaders in the church, or if you're on the platform, it's just like, you don't want uh, people to see that aspect, because I know I've experienced this as well. It's just like, I'm supposed to be, the worship leader. I'm supposed to be this and this. Why am I dealing with anxiety? Why am I feeling depressed? Or why am I having doubts, or things like that? And it's just like, it's a weird place to be in. And so I so appreciate that. But I totally agree. A lot of times the enemy will keep you from wanting to go to that piano, from wanting to go to that guitar, to sing that song, or to play that Spotify playlist or whatever,
Yep.
because he knows that's the very point of your breakthrough. It's that very connection point to your breakthrough in Jesus. And so I totally resonate with what you're saying, because I've been there as well. And I think that's so powerful, is even though we can function in something, and we can function in our gifting for so long, and we know what worship has brought us through in the past. We just know the experiences we've had in the presence of God in the past. But sometimes you just get tired. Sometimes you just get worn down. Sometimes you just feel like, I don't have anything to give. I'm anxious, I'm jittery, I'm this, I'm that. But I think that's so powerful what you said, is it was the very thing that was going to bring you out of it. And David, he is known as a man after God's own heart. And I love his vulnerability in the Psalms. And some of them is just like, I'm in anguish. Lord, I feel like I am going to die.
Right. Right.
It's like those moments. It's just like, he was real with God. And the Lord he looked at him as a man after his own heart, even in those dark times.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's been a theme on a couple of our episodes this season, of just being willing to just acknowledge where you're at. And because as Christians, sometimes it's so easy to like put on the mask, right? And just like, I'm not feeling that. Like, I didn't think that, or like, that's probably not really what it is. Like, I'm probably, like, we're the one exception to like, no, it can't be depression, or it can't be anxiety.
Exactly.
But God is like literally asking us to just like rip off the masks and be willing to just sit in what we're feeling, what we're experiencing, but not to like camp there and stay there, but so that we can like fully resolve what's going on, so that we can move forward into the things that he has for us. Because the longer we deny things, the longer we just leave them under the rug or in a corner where we're not dealing with them, the longer the process is going to be for us in the end. And so I really feel like in this time, God is calling us as Christians just to take off the masks. Like, it's okay if you're struggling with depression. It's okay if you're struggling with anxiety, or for someone who's suicidal, or even, struggling with homosexuality, or like whatever it is, just bring it to God and let, and like you had talked about, just like those nights of being a kid, or, through your anxiety, even of just like having worship music on and just laying it before God. And like, I can't do this on my own. That's the place that we have to come with God if we really want to step into what he has for us in the days ahead.
Yeah.
And I think he wants that. Like I know he wants that. And that's something that, I don't know if I feel like myself, I deal with that on my own. I'm like, okay, well, no, I'm not going to take this to God, because, this is a small thing. This is not really anything, but those small things can add up to bigger things. And if you're not taking it to the Lord, which is a simple thing of just going, God, I need you just to take hold of this and just do whatever you can with it. Like, a simple thing of doing that is sometimes so hard for people. And that's what's so sad. I hate that. But if anything, I think that's what we should do every single time, even if it is a small little thing. That's one thing I tell my little boy. I'm like, he'll fall down and he has a boo-boos, he calls them, and I'll say, let's pray. Let's pray that God will take this pain away right now. And that's just something I want to instill in him, because I feel like I didn't necessarily have that. And it took me a long time to realize it's okay to ask God for help, because that's what he's there for. We're his kids. He wants us to come up. He wants us to be better. He wants us to do whatever we can with what we have. And so of course he wants us to be the best, so he wants to take all those things that he can off of us. So I'm glad you guys mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like God uses the things that we go through, no matter how small or how big, for what he's called us to do, and to even just like go in deeper in worship, like the very things we're avoiding to process and heal from are actually the things that we need to help build the foundation, or to give us the skills that we need, or the character and the integrity. And it's not easy to walk through. And I think sometimes we think because we're Christians, like we get the peace out card, like I don't have to go through this, I don't have to walk through that because I'm a Christian. But that's not the case. Like we prayed for our dad's healing, and it didn't happen on this side of eternity, and our parents got divorced as well, and that was a difficult thing to walk through. And there's just been thing after getting sick, and all these things we've walked through. But literally, as we've submitted them to God, like he has always consistently brought beauty from the ashes. Exactly. Every single time. And it may be years down the road, but those dots do always connect for a greater good, and for our good, and for his purpose. And so listeners, if you're going through something that you don't necessarily want to be in, or you can't see the good that could come out of it, just keep going, because God definitely has a purpose and a plan for you, and he's going to bring something out of it for your good.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so tell us some of those good things as far as like the projects you've been able to work on. And we know that you are able to work on music with your husband, who's a producer and has a studio there in Huntsville. So like, tell us about some of your singles.
Okay. So my husband and I have been together for 10 years. We've been married for 10 years. And in those 10 years, because he's a producer, and he also was working with our church a lot of those years too. Sometimes my music kind of got put on the back burner because he had other, projects going on, but we would always just, anytime we could, just get together and write. And he is so talented and so incredibly just gifted in the area of music. Sometimes I tell him, I'm like, you're actually the person that needs to be forefront in all of this, but he's the guy, he wants to be back behind the scenes. But we write a lot together, and even separate, and then kind of come together. That's what's kind of cool, is that we do a lot of writing separately and then just kind of bring it all together. But we have so many things that we've worked on, but we've actually released 4 different singles. My favorite is the one that we just released, which is called With All of Heaven. And my husband actually wrote this song. It's been probably 7-8 years ago. And it was funny because we were talking about it, and at the time when he wrote it, there wasn't a lot of songs just really deep diving into what heaven is going to be like, or what we can expect when we are in heaven. But at the same time, there wasn't a lot of songs that still had that same mentality of here being on earth, thinking about heaven.
Right.
And what I love about heaven is that, worship is nonstop. It's always going. Yeah. And so, at any point in our busy lives, we can stop and we can join with all of heaven to sing, to worship, to praise, to give glory and honor to him. And so that's sort of what this song that we just released this one about a month ago. And that's sort of what it kind of encaptures, is that thought of us singing with all of heaven, and joining in, that we all get to do it. We're not maybe all together, but we all get to do it together at the same time, and glorify the Lord in unity, even though we might not have each other right next to us, you know, our loved ones or whoever. But that song is so powerful because it really is a song that focuses on praising Jesus, giving honor to him. You know, there's a lot of songs these days, which I love, worship songs. But it sometimes talks a lot about us and what, you know, what we're going through and how we're getting through it. And of course it's, you know, comes positive because it is him who's helping us through these things. But this is one of those songs that I literally, like, the whole time I'm just singing about him. I'm singing about him. And I think that's why it's my favorite song, just because it's all about him, you know, and that's really ultimately what we do in worship. And as a worship leader, you know, that's sort of my mantra, is that I want to make sure that I'm always pushing out if I could stand behind a curtain, I would, and sing.
Right.
I always want everything to be focused on him. And so we work together on a lot of music. We've got more coming this fall, which I'm super excited about. And you know, it's just things that have been on our heart for years that we're just now getting to release for everyone to hear. So yeah, it's really cool getting to work with him. And I do have to give huge props to him, just because he's the one that makes the magic happen. I sometimes just tell him, I'm like, I just come in here and sing, that's all. And he's like, no. This is a team effort here. So I love working.
Teamwork.
Yeah. And I just love that aspect of, like, at any point we can stop and join in heaven. And what, you know, it just makes me think, like, at any point in our day we can stop and even just ask God, like, what do you want me to do? What decision do you want me to make? Or, you know, what should our day be? Like, at any point in time, we can stop and literally partner with heaven and partner with God. And it's neat because, like, in Hebrews, it talks about the great cloud of witnesses that's up there cheering us on. Like, that's what I imagine in my mind, is just like our dad or the other people who have gone before us, even like David and Abraham and like all those guys up there too. We get to, like, to join worshiping God with them. And for some reason lately, there've been like a few names of God that have really stuck out to me. And one of them this week has been like the Rock of Ages, and then like Ancient of Days. And I don't know what God's doing with, but it's just like, there's something about that, like, generational thing. There's something about God being like, you know, the beginning to the end. Like, there's just something really powerful about that I think he's trying to get to me. But I just think it's so neat that it doesn't start with us and it doesn't stop with us. But it's going on and on and on. And, like, what an amazing God we serve.
Exactly.
I love the perspective you're bringing on worship and that process, because I think sometimes we look at ourselves and our situation so singularly and just like it's just inwardly a lot of introspection and things like that. But like, when you think about it, it's bigger than me. It's bigger than 2021. It's bigger than America. You know, it's just like and when you think of it that way, it kind of puts things in perspective, and one that's often different than what, like you said, a lot of even church music is so inward focused. And I love it as well, because there is that conversation that we have with God. Like, I'm dealing with this. I need you. You are this to me, that love song exchange. But there is something like the angels in heaven, every time they get a different glimpse of who he is, they say, holy, 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 you know. And there is something about that I would say inner court, holy of holy worship, that isn't the outer court where we're bringing our sins, bringing our baggage, bringing this and our emotions, but it's in the inner court and holy of holies, where we are just consumed in his presence and who he is.
I think that's one thing too, that this year has sort of, even just the past 2 years for me, he really has taken me back to the simplicity of worship and hearing him. You know, I know there's a lot of things that are going on in the world, and a lot of voices that are speaking into our hearts and lives and different things, and some good, some bad. But something the Lord just kind of spoke to me was that it's just simple. You know, you just have got to just get back to the foundation of what this all is. And that is simply just to praise and worship me and in a way that is pure and that is not self-seeking. And I don't know, that's just been something that's sort of resonated with me this year, to get back to that. Even it's funny because even in some of the worship sets that I've been a part of, I've found myself wanting to go back to hymns that I used to sing at my Baptist church that I grew up in. You know, it just takes me back to that purity of knowing who he is. And so I just love that he takes you through those moments and those times in every season that you're in, whether it be a really hard season or a really good season. Simply going back to worship is going to honestly be that probably strength for you in general. Each person may have their own way of worship. You know, it's not necessarily just music. You know, I think that there's definitely other outlets and other ways that people can worship him through their art or through their, you know, their service or whatever in their community and things like that. But I also think that just understanding who he is and what he is in your life is so important. And if we miss that, then I think we were, you know, sort of maybe left out in left field. You know, you don't really know what to do. So that's really been important to me this year, is just getting back to the simple things.
Yeah, that's good. Because actually, before you even said that, I was thinking of a lot of times when we are doing like a worship set or something, we'll just go into like, I exalt thee a lot. And like literally that song just encapsulates that you just like giving him all the glory and just like focusing it, like you're out of it. And it's just like, I exalt thee, oh God.
Yeah.
And I love those moments in a service, because usually we'll start out with, you know, whatever songs that they may be about like us conversing with God, or it may just maybe singing about him. But then when you get to that kind of like that holy hush, and it's just like all of a sudden then you're singing to him.
Yeah.
It's just there's nothing like it. And some people want to like fill in the silence or fill in the gaps. You know, they don't want to wait. It sounds like, you know, you're like nodding your head. Yep.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's just like, they want to fill it because it's awkward, but it's like, no, like if we just wait here, like we're going to, you know, his presence is just like, thickening in the room. And then you just get to that point. Like, I guess it's because it's where you've shut off like everything of you, you know, like you've moved beyond, like Alicia talked about, the baggage and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, like you're just in his holy presence, and that's that holy ground. And it's just such an amazing place to be. And it's my hope and my prayer that the churches here in America, like, will get back to that place of worship, where we can wait on God, where we can, you know, get through the stuff we need to get through that we're dealing with or whatever, but then just like make it to that spot where it's just us and him, and we're at his feet, just worshiping him.
I do think that it just builds our faith in just when we are in that moment and you are waiting on the Lord, you're waiting to hear what he is speaking into you. I love those moments. Like, those are my favorite moments, because I feel like that's when he speaks to me even the most. And that's when he really, for me, makes things clear, a lot clearer than maybe they haven't been for me in just my everyday walk. And maybe it's just because I'm not in that specific moment. You know, he waits for those really focused moments. And so I really feel like that's for a lot of people, I think that those moments are so important. And if we don't get there, then you miss out on those moments. And I know that the Lord will find a way to speak into our hearts, but I just think that those are so crucial to even just the livelihood, the building of faith, the building of trust, even in a deeper relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. I call it the art of lingering. And a lot of times it is an art, because you really have to practice it in a lot of ways. You have to fight that urge to, okay, let's on to the next thing, on to the next song, on to announcements, or, you know, different things like that. But there is something about lingering that I've just heard more clearly in those times, or even heard the Lord singing back the song I was singing to him. And vividly remember one moment we were singing at a youth camp, and I was just singing over and over again, Lord, you are the song of my heart. You are the song of my heart. And in one of those lingering moments, I heard that still small voice say, no, you are the song of my heart.
That gives me
I
chills.
know it does to me every time I still think about it, because it was such a intimate moment that sometimes as worshipers or whatever you do, going to work, raising kids, or we can get so focused in what we can do for the Lord, what kind of fruit we can produce. And it's in those still small moments where we actually hear that we are the song of his heart.
Exactly.
And so I just feel like we're all kindred spirits here.
Yes.
I do too.
Thanks, listeners, for joining our coffee talk. But like, this is
this is for us.
Yeah, right. I know, this has like encouraged me so much.
Oh, me too. I feel the
Just
same.
yeah, just connecting with you and hearing your story, and
Mhm.
just hearing we serve the same God, and it's the
Exactly.
same, it's so much of the same process, even though we
Mhm.
have different lifestyles or struggles or upbringings or things like that. We serve the same God, and that's so
Mhm.
evident in how you speak of him, and we
Mhm.
recognize that. So thank you so much for just, like I said, being vulnerable and sharing
Mhm.
your journey. And I know listeners are going to be blessed by this, but I also want them to go check out your music, and
Yes.
so that you can be the worshiper they turn on when they're going through
Yes.
those difficult
Yeah.
times. So
Yes.
how can they
That's what it's all about.
find you, find out more about your ministry?
Our music is on most any outlet that you can go to. Apple Music, it's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, YouTube Music, all of the ones,
Yeah.
But also I have an Instagram. It's Andrea.Okwu. So that's where I post a lot of things about upcoming projects and different things like that. So go follow me. That's so weird to me to say a lot of times.
I
But yeah,
know.
I mean, that's it's really where we're just trying to get the music out so people can worship. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
Awesome. So they'll just look up Andrea Okwu on Spotify or Apple Music and all that
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just listed under my name, Andrea Okwu, and that's spelled OKWU in case you're listening.
Awesome. Yeah, we asked her before the podcast, like, so do you say that?
That's
I
awesome.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for
Yes.
coming up higher. Like
Thank
Alicia
you,
said,
ladies. Y'all are a blessing, and just thanks for letting me be a part of it.
of course. Yeah. And you're welcome to come back anytime.
Yes.
Sounds good.
If you have another release or anything going on. But yeah, we're just so appreciative of you taking the time to do this, and listeners, just the conversation of worship and how to come up higher in those things, and to know where to turn when things might not be going right, or even just the powerful idea of at any point in time in your day, you can just stop and partner with heaven and connect with
Yeah.
heaven and connect with the
Exactly.
creator of the universe. Like, we have that ability
Yes.
because of Christ living in us. So thank you so much for joining us again this week, Come Up Crew, and we will see you next week for another amazing episode.
God bless.
Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. One of the greatest ways we come up higher is through worship, and it's our desire to help you create meaningful worship moments through the music that we create.
Yeah, you can stream our music on Google, Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you stream music. And physical copies of our albums are available at our store at aliciaandwhitney.com.
So join us in coming up higher together through worship.